Hello everyone, I am Torit Mato and you are watching Art in Purulia. Today we will discuss about gouache, watercolor step brother. Gouache is popularly known as opaque watercolor. Let's first see what is gouache. Gouache is a type of water-based paint that shares similarities with both watercolor and acrylic paint, and it's known for its high pigment concentration, opacity, and ability to create smooth matte finishes. Gouache is typically made by combining pigment, a binder, which is usually gum arabic, and a white pigment such as chalk to give it its distinctive opaque quality. It's available in tubes similar to oil or acrylic paints and can be mixed with water to achieve different consistencies and effects. Unlike watercolor, which often relies on the white of the paper for highlights, gouache allows artists to work in layers and cover up previous layers easily due to its opacity. This makes it a versatile medium for both bold, solid colors and detailed, intricate work. And gouache can be used on a variety of surfaces including watercolor paper, illustration board, and even canvas. Artists use gouache for a wide range of purposes including illustrations, fine art paintings, graphic design, and commercial art. It is favored by many artists for its versatility, vibrant colors, and ability to create both delicate washes and bold opaque effects. One important thing to note is that gouache paintings can be reactivated with water even after drying, which means they should be protected with fixatives or framed under glass to prevent smudging or damage. Overall, gouache is a popular medium for artists looking to explore the balance between transparency and opacity, as it offers unique qualities that distinguish it from other water-based paints. Let's see the difference between gouache and watercolor. While gouache and watercolor are both water-based painting mediums, they have some distinct differences in terms of characteristics and application. Some of the key differences between gouache and watercolor are like opacity. Gouache is known for its high opacity, meaning it provides solid and opaque color coverage. It can effectively cover up previous layers and allows for corrections and adjustments. In contrast, watercolor is transparent, allowing light to pass through the layers and relies on the white of the paper for highlights. Pigment concentration. Gouache has a higher pigment concentration compared to watercolor. This higher concentration contributes to its opacity and ability to create vibrant and intense colors. Watercolor, on the other hand, has a lower pigment concentration, but results are more subtle and has transparent hues. Drying time. Gouache generally dries faster than watercolor and it dries to a matte finish relatively quickly, allowing for quicker layering and adjustments. Watercolor, however, dries more slowly due to its transparency and higher water content, which can lead to longer drying times between layers. The light paints dry a bit dark and dark colors dry a bit light. Mixing and layering. Gouache allows for easy layering and mixing of colors due to its opacity. Artists can work in multiple layers and cover up previous layers without much difficulty. Watercolor, being transparent, is better suited for layering washes to create subtle transitions and luminous effects. Texture. Gouache tends to have a more matte and flat appearance when it's dry. In contrast, watercolor often retains a translucent quality, allowing the texture and color of the paper to show through, resulting in a more delicate and ethereal look. Light fastedness. Gouache paints typically have higher light fastedness compared to watercolors. Light fastedness refers to the resistance of colors to fading or changing when exposed to light. While some watercolor pigments are also light fast, certain colors may have lower ratings, requiring precautions when it comes to preserving the longevity of the artwork. Handling and reactivation. Once gouache is dry, it remains relatively stable and can be handled without reactivating or smudging. But watercolor remains soluble even after drying, and additional layers of water or paint can re-wet and blend previously applied layers. Or in fact, it can spoil the previous applied layers if not very careful. Surface and application. Gouache is suitable for a variety of surfaces including watercolor paper, illustration board and canvas. Watercolor is primarily used on watercolor paper but can also be applied to other absorbent surfaces. Both the mediums typically require a similar approach when it comes to brushwork and the use of water. That means the similar techniques can be used in both. Understanding these differences can help in choosing the appropriate medium for the desired artistic effects and techniques. Similar to watercolor and in some ways similar to acrylic, gouache offers a variety of painting techniques that allows artists to achieve different effects and styles. Here we'll discuss some common gouache painting techniques one can explore. Washes, very common technique. Gouaches can be used to create smooth, transparent washes similar to watercolor. Dilute the gouache with water to achieve a thin consistency and apply it in translucent layers to build up colors gradually. Layering. Gouache is excellent for layering because of its opaque nature. Apply one layer of gouache and let it dry completely before adding another layer on top. This technique allows for corrections, adjustments, and the creation of depth and dimension in your artwork. If you apply a very thick initial layer, it may get reactivated while applying a layer on top of it. So it's always advisable to lay the initial wash thin. So a thumb rule of thick over thin works well, but the layers should not be too thick, else there can be chances of cracking. This of course doesn't happen with acrylic. Dry brush. Use a relatively dry brush with a small amount of gouache to create textured effects and fine details. This technique involves dragging the brush lightly over the surface, allowing the texture of the paper to show through. Mainly the side of the brush is used for such a technique. Wet on wet. Apply wet gouache directly onto a wet surface for soft blending and merging of colors. This technique is particularly useful for creating atmospheric effects, gradients or smooth transitions between initial hues. Impasto. Gouache can be applied thickly to create impasto effects. You can use a palette knife or a stiff brush to build up the paint in textured areas, creating a three-dimensional appearance. Glazing. Similar to oil painting or even watercolor, you can create glazes with gouache by layering transparent colors over dry opaque layers. This technique allows you to achieve luminosity and depth by letting light pass through the transparent layers. Stippling. Stippling involves creating textures or patterns by applying small dots or dashes of gouache. This technique is effective for adding texture to surfaces, creating foliage or adding intricate details. Dry wash. Apply thick gouache directly onto a dry surface without diluting it with water. This technique creates bold opaque areas with crisp edges and a flat appearance. Graffito. Once the gouache is dry, you can use a sharp tool like a toothpick or a palette knife or the edge of a brush to scratch or scrape away areas of paint. This technique allows you to reveal the underlying layers or create textured effects. Splattering. Dip a brush into gouache, hold it over the surface and tap it lightly with another brush or your fingers to create splatter effects. Or you can use even a toothbrush for this effect for smaller splatter. This technique is ideal for adding texture, creating stars or suggesting a sense of movement. These are just a few examples of the many techniques you can explore with gouache. Do some experimentation, practice and combine different techniques to develop your unique style and achieve the desired effects in your gouache paintings. Now we'll discuss some steps what can help you to get started with painting using gouache. Firstly, gather your materials. You will need gouache paints, brushes, watercolor paper or any other thick paper or suitable surface, a palette and water for cleaning your brushes. If you are already into watercolor painting, you will just need the gouache paints. Then prepare your workspace, that is, set up a clean and well lit area where you can comfortably work. Lay down a protective cover to prevent any paint stains or spills if you feel like. Thereafter, choose your subject, decide what you want to paint. It could be still life arrangement, landscape, a portrait or anything that inspires you. Then sketch that composition. Use a pencil to lightly sketch the main outlines and shapes of your subject onto the paper or canvas. This step is optional, but it can help you establish the basic structure of your artwork. Here you need not be afraid of dark outlines like in watercolor, because you can cover it up with opaque layers. Mix your colors. Gouache paints come in tubes and you will need to squeeze out the colors you want to use on your palette. Start with the primary colors, that is my recommendation, that is red, blue and yellow, and mix them to create secondary and tertiary colors. This will give you practice for color mixing also. Gouache can be easily diluted with water to create even lighter shades. Apply the first layer. Gouache can be used both thinly and thickly. First layer, it is better to keep it thin unless that is going to be your final layer itself. If you want more translucent effect, mix your paint with more water. For a more opaque and solid look, use the paint straight from the tube. Apply the first layer of paint to establish the base colors of your composition. Then build up the layers. Gouache allows you to layer colors on top of each other, so you can add depth and dimension to your artwork. Let each layer dry completely before applying the next layer to prevent smudging or blending. Use different techniques. Gouache can be applied using various techniques, including wet on wet, dry brush and glazing, which we have discussed earlier. Experiment with different brush strokes, textures and effects to achieve the desired look. Add details. Once your initial layers are dry, you can start adding finer details to your painting. Use smaller brushes and thinner mixes of gouache to capture the intricate elements of your subject. Finishing touches. Take a step back and assess your artwork. Make any final adjustments, highlights or shadows to enhance the overall composition. You can also use a white gouache paint to add accents or make corrections if needed. Let it dry and protect your artwork. Gouache dries relatively quickly, but it's essential to let your painting fully dry before handling or framing it. Once dry, you can use a fixative spray or store it behind glass to protect it from dust and damage. Remember here, practice is the key when working with any new medium. You need to experiment, have fun, and explore the versatility of gouache to develop your unique style and create, of course, stunning artworks. Before we finish this video, I would like to give you some tips for gouache painting beginners. Firstly, break your design down to shapes. It's less intimidating, and start with easier paintings or easier shapes that will not make things difficult. Choose your color palette before you start. Decide a couple of colors that work well together, and then if you want more variety, you can use hues of these colors to keep it all looking consistent. Invest in your materials. Investing in good quality materials pays dividends. Vibrant colors, better painting, and better sense of satisfaction. If you are not completely comfortable with painting straight onto your paper, then try sketching out your ideas first. This way you can play with the placement of shapes and sizes before you commit to the painting. Simple dots and brush strokes work well for fillers in repeat patterns. If you feel like your painting is looking a bit empty, try using one of these colors from your palette and add some dots around the elements. Experiment with different paints. It's easy to enjoy working with a type of paint and not try anything else, but new colors bring variety and excitement. Gouache is supposed to be opaque, but not all colors are 100% opaque. So sometimes when you don't want to show the bottom layer at all, but the new layer is not opaque enough to cover it, try adding a little bit of white onto the color and see the magic. Also similar to watercolor, if you know that as per the initial outline sketch, you have some areas which will be white or very light color, avoid applying any dark color first. You will avoid the hassle of making mud. In fact, it's good idea to do the initial layer using watercolor, and then when dried, apply gouache. Don't try the other way around, of course, because it won't be effective. You can use paints and pencils to define the details once dried, but be careful to not overdo it, else the realism will get lost. Before washing your brush in the tumbler, it's a good idea to clean it with a cloth of tissue, especially if it was white, because the chalk that goes into the water, if you use to mix it with some other paint, it will make the color chalky and dull. Though you can paint on paper, board or canvas, stretched canvas and canvas papers are ideal for gouache. Just like adding whites makes attractive opaque colors, adding greys of various values produces attractive darks that are often difficult to control in traditional watercolors. In summary, we can say that the versatile and easy to use gouache can be used in primarily three ways: thin transparent application like watercolor, thick opaque application like acrylic, and as flat washes for illustrations. I hope you have learned something new today. Thank you so much for watching the video, and if you have watched so far but still haven't subscribed the channel, please consider subscribing. Stay healthy, stay safe. See you.